all the aspects which are possible for the electrochemical processes. Um, these processes are quite old. Actually, the one of the processes called electrocoagulation, maybe knowing, where we are producing the ions, aluminum and iron, by using the anodes made up of aluminum and iron. We'll be looking to that in more in detail. So this electrocoagulation process is as old as about 110 years or so, and it was used for water treatment in USA. And there are, as I said, there are other processes are available. For example, Fenton treatments or other advanced oxidation processes. But the simplicity of this process makes it very important for the application to various kind of industrial wastewaters. So these are advanced processes basically for the removal of toxic pollutants from the wastewater. When we want to achieve the complete mineralization, we have two pathways available. This I'm talking to in terms of, again, in terms of industrial wastewater as well as water treatment. For example, you take a dye wastewater or some kind of dye intermediate wastewater or something, then you require either a high temperature incineration, that is called thermal incineration, or thermal oxidation. So by raising the temperature, it is burned in the presence of oxygen, which is a process we know very well. Another is the chemical oxidation, in which the water is subjected, the wastewater is subjected to various chemicals or various processes by which those compounds can be oxidized. So if you now compare these two, the incineration is not very efficient in terms of energy, because we also have to evaporate the entire amount of water also, and it generates the gaseous pollutants and ash also. Gaseous pollutants could be even dangerous, and the chemical oxidation may have secondary waste or may not have secondary waste produced from that. So what electrochemical methods are, just to begin with, this is the simplest form that I am showing you for any electrochemical reactor. It would have a reactor where you can fill your aqueous sample, that is wastewater or any water treatment sample or something, and you have got two electrodes, one is cathode, another is anode, and we supply the direct current to this. So DC direct current is supplied, and you regulate the voltage and ampere that which is going into this. So there is a rectifier. So this one here is the rectifier which is used, and through which you supply the current into this. So this is what I have shown here is the undivided cell. That means the cell is completely there. There is no division between the anode and cathode. Another kind of cells could be divided cells, in which a CEM, that is called cationic exchange membrane, may be required to separate the cathode and anode. We'll also look at that in detail. And here on the anode, there will be oxidation. So it could be direct oxidation or indirect oxidation, and there are on the cathode there may be reduction. So various types of processes can occur in this, and the required, whatever we want, the target pollutant could be destroyed by this process. So let's try to see what are the advantages as compared to other processes. Here, the biggest advantage of this process is that we use simply just electrons. So we are allowing only flow of electron through the sample, and the process occur on cathode or anode as per the requirement. And that's why it's a very clean reagent. It does not add anything to the water, or it does not add any salt or something. For example, if you take chlorine and then it will add chloride into the water, because when you dissolve chlorine in water, it will form HOCl and HCl. So there will be the dissolution of chlorine in that, chloride into that. So such things are there. But here the electrons are only passed, so there is no change in the properties or other things. It is also very versatile because it can result into direct or indirect oxidation, or it can result into reduction. It can deal with solid, liquid, gaseous pollutants. There are electro scrubbers also available, so you can use electrochemical process for scrubbing the gases also. It can also induce the production of precipitates. It can produce gaseous species like hydrogen and oxygen by splitting water. It can lead to pH change also, or charge neutralization also. And there are so many options available for types of reactors. You can have continuous flow reactor or batch reactors or rotating electrode reactors, or so many or fluidized bed reactors or three-dimensional electrode reactors. So there are so many configurations available, so many shapes or so many types of reactor conditions are available. And that's why it is very, very versatile. You can apply it to anything. Another very interesting thing is you can apply volume. I mean, ranging from microliters to millions of liters can be treated if a properly designed system is there. This processes do not require the high temperature or pressure, and that's why it works at normal temperature and pressures. As compared to other methods like incineration or supercritical oxidation or something. So that is also another advantage of this process. And you can control the process by controlling how much voltage or how much ampere you want to pass through the process. So you have got very good control over the process. It is also amenable to automation. You can produce a lot of automation also in this system. So that way, these reactors and this kind of looking at the varieties of reactors, the way it can be operated, there are so many ways in which it can be used, and that's why it is very versatile process. The other very important thing is the selectivity. You can select, the selectivity is whatever pollutant you want to degrade, only those will be selectively degraded. So that is also possible by controlling the potential, and more so for the reduction process. In case of reductive processes, we'll see that rather than oxidative processes, reductive processes are much more selective. So we can control which out of a mixture of pollutants which we want to degrade. So that can also be done very well. As I said, it is amenable to automation and maybe cost effective depending upon what you are using in the reactor. So after this, let us start with the different available processes at present and how they are applied. So this is the second topic that I am going through. These are various topics or various processes available. Electrocoagulation, electrooxidation, electrofenton. Flotation can also be used, electroflotation. And then there are combinations like peroxycoagulation, or we'll see some more into that also. So combinations are also there. Electroreduction is there, electrodisinfection is there. So you can see various types of wastewaters which can be treated using these processes are given here, like dyes, pigments, textile, distillery, or any such wastewater which contains high colloidal solids, or which are like electrooxidation you can use for the wastewaters which are having very high COD, non-biodegradable or COD or something. Electrofenton can be similarly used for pesticide industries or synthetic organic chemical industry wastewater. So electroreduction, as I said, selectively if you want to reduce the chlorinated compounds or nitro compounds or azo groups, then these processes are very good selective. We have got very high selectivity for them. And disinfection, of course, because we can produce chlorine inside and in situ, and that's how we can lead to disinfection of drinking water also. So rather than adding chlorine gas or sparging chlorine into it, we can have a electro disinfection process also possible. And as I said, there could be combinations. So electrocoagulation, electroflotation is one group of one type of the electro processes. Others are, you can see on the right hand side, they are all oxidative processes, that is electrooxidation, electrofenton, electrodisinfection. And there could be a combination that is called peroxycoagulation, where we use we take into advantage both the electrodes, that is the anode as well as cathode. We'll see how it is done. And then electroreduction is entirely different process because there the reduction is occurring. That's why I've kept it little separate there. So let's go one by one into these processes, how they occur. I haven't discussed all of them, but most of them I have discussed because looking to the limitations of the time, we'll see how many we can cover, but most of the things we'll be able to cover. So electrocoagulation, to understand electrocoagulation, first we need to understand what is chemical coagulation. We have been using chemical coagulation in water treatment, whereby we add alum or ferrous sulfate or ferric chloride or similar kind of coagulating agents. They produce the the multivalent cations like Al plus 3 or AlOH plus 1 or AlOH plus 2 or something. So all different types of hydrated species or the metal species are produced, and these species are responsible for the charge neutralization or adsorption, and you know the mechanisms of the coagulation. So this multivalent cations, metal cations, are we are using for chemical coagulation. The same thing we can achieve in electrocoagulation. Normally we use for that Fe or Al, that is Fe0 or iron, that is iron plate or aluminum plate, as anode in the normal electrolytic cell, and because it is placed at anode, the metal will be corroded. So due to that corrosion, that is called anodic corrosion. Because of that, there are metal cations produced, that is M plus 2, like M plus 2 or M plus 3, like Al, it is be Al plus 3 or Fe plus 2 will be produced. And these metal ions will do the same job that is done by the chemical coagulants, and there will be flock formation, and which can be then settled out. So this is also this you can understand this is an indirect process because directly coagulation is not occurring. What is happening is on the anode or on the cathode there is no coagulation occurring. In fact, on the anode we are corroding the metal, and that metal ions are doing the, so it's a one step followed by the other, and that's why it is it's an indirect process, not straight way on the electrodes. Okay, so as I said, this is the chemistry is very simple. For aluminum anode, you can have Al plus 3 electron on the anode. So it will be corrosion of Al0, that is aluminum metal. And under alkaline condition, this can form AlOH thrice, which can lead to sweep coagulation, which we all know. And under acidic condition, or not acidic, but in the when the alkalinity is limited, it can form various hydrated species, which can lead to charge neutralization and adsorption and charge neutralization process in the for the colloidal mole. So you can use this process also for normal coagulation. On the in case of iron anode, if you have iron, then it will produce Fe plus 2, which will form FeOH twice, or under acidic or under the limited alkalinity, it will produce various types of ferric, hydrated ferric species will be produced. Here, there is one more, okay, before going to that, these side reactions also occur at anode and cathode, which are not useful for us. We are losing electricity in that, which is it is not preventable. In fact, it occurs. We do not have much choice in that. So on the anode, water will be splitted to form O2, and on the cathode, hydrogen gas will be produced. And you can use advantageously this gas bubbles, which will rise, and normally it will be trapped into the flocks, and that's how your flocks can float to the surface, and that is this phenomena we can use for electroflotation process. So you can your suspended solids are not only trapped in the flocks, but they are also floated. So rather than settling, it is a flotation process. This process also useful normally for wastewaters which are having very high TDS, or the density is basically high, so that flock settling rate is very slow. So rather than that, if you can make them lighter by this entrapment of bubbles of the hydrogen and oxygen, so that will be floating on the surface. So that is electroflotation also. So in nutshell, this is what is happening here. Anode here, this is the electron goes into the circuit, and M plus 2 or M plus N, that is basically the ions are produced, and this will lead to, if there are any kind of pollutants, they will be trapped into these blocks and it will be precipitated. Or if it is lighter material like oil or something, then you can use electroflotation also to remove them at the top. So this is and here there is no other process occurring on the cathode except that we are producing hydrogen on the surface of cathode. So the responsible electrode here is anode, where because of which most of the work is being done here. Okay. Now, what kind of different configurations we have in any electrochemical process, whether it is electrocoagulation or electrooxidation, we can have two types of configurations possible. That is called monopolar or bipolar. In case of monopolar, you can understand that it is the first one here. This all the electrodes are separately connected. So this one is like first electrode here is positively charged on both the sides, and the next one is negatively charged, and so on and so forth. But in the bipolar, you can see what is happening. Only first and the last electrodes are connected, and that's why this surface here on this side, on the left side, will be positively charged. On the right hand side will be negatively charged. Again, this will be positively, this will be negatively charged, and so on and so forth. So that's why each electrode will have bipolarity. On one side the positive, on other side it is negative. So that is how this is happening here. In case of monopolar, as I said, entire electrode has got only one charge on it, either positive or negative. So these configurations are also there are a lot of research being done on this, that which configuration works in which condition, and quite interesting results are there because of that. There could be different configurations of the reactors also, like this is a monopolar configuration here, and then I'm showing this in the plan, so you can see that it enters the wastewater or water enters here, and it is coming out from here. So when it comes out, it is coagulated, so that can be taken to flocculator or can be taken to settling depending upon the types of flocks produced. Or you can have again here a monopolar configuration is, but you can see that it's a baffled kind of, so electrodes themselves are used as a baffle, and the water has to move in the zigzag direction, and during that time it is reacting with the flocks, or the removal is occurring. So there is one more interesting aspect of electrocoagulation, which you can achieve using iron as electrode. So what I'm showing here is let me first show you the initial and final reading, so that probably you will understand what is happening here. This is this was one of the research that we did on reactive black, but this is the dye solution, reactive black pie. You can see it's very dark in color, and it is before treatment, and the after treatment you can see it is very faintly color, almost all the color is removed. And the same thing I'm trying to show here in this picture here. This is the UV visible chromatogram. You can see that this is the initial color or absorbance of the RB5, and it has reduced to this much. So almost more than, let's say, about 80 to 90% color removal is there. And interestingly, another thing that we need to observe here is this peak here is rising up. As you can see, you can see here that it is rising up from here. So this is this shows the generation of the intermediates of reactive black pipe, and so these intermediates are produced. I will show you why it is produced, and that is the mechanism we'll also discuss. So these intermediates are produced, and this is because of the reduction of the azo bonds in this structure of a reactive black pipe. It's a big structure. I'll just show you that. So what happens is here we are taking one more advantage in case of ion electrodes. As I said, ion electrodes, when you use it as anode, it produces Fe plus 2. And you know that Fe plus 2 can be further oxidized to Fe plus 3. So Fe plus 2 has got one more electron which can be used, which it gives away to produce Fe plus 3. So that one electron reduction can help us to reduce the azo bond in this dye. So azo bond is the chromophore for this dye, that is the responsible group for color of this dye. So once you remove or once you split that, the color is gone. So I'll just show you. So this is, let me just show you. Is it visible, or I have raised this, I mean, I have enlarged this. Is there any problem in this, or is it visible or not?
It is not enlarged.
Oh, it is still the small one only. I am trying to show you some animation here, but I don't know whether it is.
No, it is not visible. Animation is not.
Oh.
We are seeing the not in the that mode. That is.
It is not F5 mode, right? It is not the slideshow
we are
mode.
Seeing, yeah, it is not in slideshow mode. Here we are seeing your all the series of slides and like that on.
Oh, but the slide is visible, right? This one.
Yeah, slide is visible.
Okay.
The slide is application of this for declaration.
Oh, next one. This one is not visible still.
No. It is application of EC for that declaration that UV visible spectra that is shown.
Okay, let me again load this.
ED Patel sir, can you do you have a PDF of this, because sometimes slides. Okay, now it is mechanism of declaration by EC that is showing.
Okay, so it is loading little late. That means.
Yes, some late is there.
Yeah, please let me know if this happens, so that I can wait, because if this happens, then I'll be missing some of the points. So let me know if it is stuck up somewhere. When I go to
so now what you can do? Can you convert? Have you converted this in your PDF? So that will be, I think,
I kept it as it is because there were some animations. I thought that I'll be able to show. That's why I have kept it like this only. Okay, so we'll try. We'll see if I'll miss the animations. Then I'll not take the animation. I'll keep it in this mode only. Okay. So yeah, so you can see here. This is your this is the reactor in which there is reactive black 5 solution, which is shown in blue color, and this here is showing the entire structure of reactive black 5. It has got 4 benzene rings, and this is, I mean, this is the naphthalene ring, and these are the 2 benzene rings, and they are connected by 2 azo bonds and double bond end. And what happens is when we generate this Fe plus 2 at the anode, it has, as I said, it has got one more electron. This is not possible for Al plus 3 because Al plus 3 is the standard Al plus 3 only. It doesn't have Al plus 4 or Al plus 2 or something. So this will have this has got one more electron, and that's why it reacts with these bonds, azo bonds, because these bonds are electron withdrawing. They want electron, and once you supply them, they get separate from this. So this bond, double bond, it is called azo bond, is broken, and it produces amine here. So NH2, and similarly here the NH2 is produced, and this entire structure is split, and that's why the color is gone, because these chromophores are important for color. So this is how it is happening. The decoloration occurs. So you can see the whatever we have discussed from this. that it can be very easily used. This process can be very easily used because we just have to provide the current to these two electrodes. We don't have to add any chemicals or anything. Even we don't need any mechanical agitation, because I mean it can be there, but a very less amount of mechanical agitation is required. There is almost no requirement of chemicals, and the sludge production also is less because it doesn't come with any impurity or anything. And because it's a pure, flux only of AlOH thrice or FeOH thrice or something, dewatering is easy. It does not have any other problems with that. So, another thing which occurs is this. Because of the dissolution of anode or corrosion of anode, there is some alkalinity also produced in this. So pH rises little bit, and because of that, some of the heavy metals can also precipitate. For example, in acid mine waste, which contains various types of heavy metals, and because it is acid mine waste, it is acidic in nature, these metals are dissolved. But if you try coagulation on that, electrocoagulation, then by natural, because of the natural rising of this pH, those metals can also precipitate. You can achieve very good current efficiency in this case, and time required also is less. So this is the advantage of the electrocoagulation processes. Okay. Next one that we are going to is the electro-oxidation process, or it is also called electrochemical oxidation process. And now, if you see in electrocoagulation, we have removed the suspended solids or the colloidal metal we are able to remove. And to some extent, the reduction, if it is Fe+2 or Fe ion is used, then you can get some reduction also. But for the organic compounds in the wastewater, for example, pesticides or herbicides or dye intermediates or any such things, we have to destroy these pollutants. We have to oxidize those, and they are not biodegradable also, such kind of pollutants. So this is the only option available to us, is to oxidize them. So electrochemical oxidation is one such process which can do this, and there are two ways in which it can be operated or it can be achieved. There is direct electrochemical oxidation and indirect electrochemical oxidation. In direct oxidation, the target compounds are oxidized directly on the anode itself, and in case of indirect oxidation, the oxidative species are produced, like OH radical is produced, or chlorine is produced, or hydrogen peroxide is produced, and they are then subsequently used to oxidize the organic matter. So either we can have direct oxidation or we can have indirect oxidation. But normally, indirect oxidation is the most predominant process occurring because there are mass transfer limitations, because the pollutants have to go to the anode to get oxidized, and which is not always a very efficient way. But the species which are produced, like oxidative species which are produced, they are available in the bulk of the solution, and because of that, mass transfer is much better as compared to direct anodic oxidation. Yeah, so you can see this figure. I'm just trying to show you what is happening here. These are indirect oxidation. This is your anode. So on the anode, this compound, any compound I have shown, just different groups are shown, and they will be oxidized when they approach this anode. Actually, what happens is the anode takes away the electron from anything that comes close to that. So it will be breaking down this compound and taking the electron, and it will be supplying back into the circuit. So the compounds are basically oxidized directly. So normally, as I said, here the mass transfer limitation is there, and that's why this second statement is important, that the rate of oxidation and rate of availability of pollutants at anode collectively determine the overall rate of reaction, because we have to allow them to reach to the anode. In that case only it is possible. And other important thing is the electrode material, which kind of electrode you are using, and nature of pollutant also makes a lot of difference here. So let's try to see that. Direct electrochemical oxidation can be achieved at a low potential. There is before the oxidation evaluation, and that is possible, but then the reaction rates are slow. I will just first we'll see what is oxidation evaluation or potential or something, and then probably it will be clear to you. And there are noble metals are required. Remember, here we cannot use on anode the aluminum or iron or nickel or zinc or any such copper or anything such is not possible, cannot be used because they will be corroded. So we need noble metal anodes such as platinum, palladium, or metal oxide coated anodes, that is called mixed metal oxide or MMO electrodes. And this kind of MMO or platinum, they provide very high electrochemical rates, and they are not dissolved also. They are not corroded also. Now, as in the first point we discussed that it requires the lower potentials. The voltage at the anode requires to be low for direct anodic oxidation to occur. Otherwise, oxidation evaluation will start as we have seen earlier. So in that case, because these potentials are low, there are possibility that some of the compounds which are oxidized there, they will form a polymeric layer on the anode surface, and this polymeric layer will prevent further oxidation of the compounds, and that is called poisoning of the anode. And this is normally occurring with the phenolic compounds. So whenever you are dealing with any kind of phenolic compounds, it is possible that there will be polymeric layer produced on the anode surface. So, like as I've discussed here, it is the phenols or chlorophenols or naphthol, pyridine. These compounds are causing the poisoning effect on the. So direct anodic oxidation, as I said, is not very preferred method because we have to use very low potentials. So the rate of reaction also is very low, and another disadvantage is the polymeric surface compounds which are trying to stick to the surface. Okay, so that's why most widely used option is the indirect anodic oxidation. So there is no direct exchange. I mean, it occurs, whatever occurs, we are not dependent on that. We, in fact, want to produce the various types of electroactive species, and these species, they are basically acting as a shuttle of electrons. So they carry the electron from the compound and give it to the anode like that. So these are the shuttles which are, and these shuttles keep on doing shuttling there. So these species are very important. Such kind of process could be reversible also. For example, you can have a metal redox couples like Ag plus and Ag plus 2 or Fe plus 2, Fe plus 3. So like for example, your Fe plus 2 will get an electron and will supply it to somebody and will become Fe plus 2 by itself. So there could be reversible or irreversible processes for example, production of ozone or H2O2 or chlorine or OH radicals. These are, once it is produced, they cannot go back. It is used in the oxidation of the process. So normally, when we use the indirect anodic oxidation for wastewater treatment, we are looking for two irreversible processes whereby we are producing different types of oxidizing agents like chlorine and other things. So it is usually much faster, as I said, because of the mass transfer. Let's see in this now, one very important aspect of indirect EO is the electrogenerated hydroxyl radicals. You know hydroxyl radicals very well. It has got very high potential, about 2.8 volt for oxidation. So, and its lifetime is very small. So basically you can imagine an hydroxyl radical as a person or as somebody who is so thirsty, so desperately thirsty of an electron, because it is OH dot. It wants one electron to go back to its normal safe position of OH minus, which is a hydroxyl ion that we know, which is there in NaOH or something. So to get that electron, it needs one electron, because its lifetime is very slow, less, few milliseconds only, and that's why it reacts with anything that comes in its way and snatches one electron from that. So that's how hydroxyl radicals are very powerful oxidizing agents. And but another problem with them is that they are reacting non-selectively with the organics. That means it is not necessary that they will attack particular group of the compounds, or they will attack particular group on benzening or something. No, whatever comes in its way, wherever electron is possible to be taken, it will be just taken by these radicals. And that's why sometimes it may create problem. But initially it produces hydroxylated derivatives step by step, and then subsequently total mineralization, total CO2H2O production is also possible. So these are very powerful oxidizing agents which are produced during indirect anodic oxidation. Okay. Now, as we discussed, this the first point I have written here is that OH radicals are generated at the surface of a high oxygen over potential. Yeah. Yeah.
What is happening that indirect anodic oxidation, that is the slide that it is showing now.
This is indirect, and what is the first line? It is hydroxyl radical, or
no direct exchange of electrons, that is showing.
It is direct. Oh, okay. So I have gone beyond that, but I don't know why it is.
Yeah. So therefore I am telling that if it can, this can be by PDF.
Let me do that.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
I'll just for a moment I'll remove this and then.
Yes.
Okay, is it visible now?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Yeah, I have opened this PDF, so maybe I'll be able to move faster a little. Yeah, okay. Yeah, okay. So this is where I think this slide is visible, no? Now indirect.
Yes. Indirect anodic oxidation is visible.
Yeah, okay. No direct.
Just you change the slide. I will tell whether it is just go next.
Yeah, okay. So I have gone to the next one now.
And also it is this is PowerPoint only showing.
No, I have opened now PDF.
No, but here PowerPoint showing. I think in share content, the same thing has come again, the PowerPoint.
I have loaded here the PDF now. It is the PDF of presentation that I have made. Just check.
Again.
Yeah, I'm.
Here.
Is it coming up now?
PowerPoint only. What is indirect anodic oxidation? That is PowerPoint only.
I have already switched off the PowerPoint. I don't know why it is.
Have you gone to shared window, and in that you have to select? Yeah.
I'm not sharing the window. I'm okay. Let me do that. Let me try. Okay. Is it visible now?
This PowerPoint only.
Only power. Okay, now it's visible, sir. Now it's visible.
Now it is PDF. Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Because this PowerPoint I have already switched off. I have already removed it.
Maybe, yeah. Now it is
Okay.
looking good. Yes.
So yeah. So just coming back to this hydroxyl radicals we are discussing about, that it is it needs the electrodes which are having high oxygen ore potential anode. So there is something that we need to understand why it is so, and it needs acidic conditions also. So if you see the ore potential basically means what, let's not go into the definition. We know that in standard conditions at normal hydrogen electrodes potential at potential of 1.23 volt, oxygen is from water, oxygen is produced. So that is the O-2 of water is oxidized to O2 gas, and for that the potential required is 1.23 volt. So this is under standard conditions, okay, and it is using the standard hydrogen electrodes also. But when you use any other electrode like what we are discussing, like PT or platinum or boron doped diamond or similar such, then there the potential required for production of oxygen is higher than 1.23 volt. So that means that you have got more potential available on the anode to do other reactions rather than producing the oxygen, because we don't want oxygen to be produced because it is a side reaction. It is of no use to us because production of oxygen doesn't give us anything. In fact, it's consuming our energy. So the anodes which are having higher oxygen potential will help us in producing OH radicals. So let me show you how it okay, so this is the table which shows oxygen ore potential of different types of anode materials, and you can see the list. Like platinum is very close to the theoretical potential required, that is 1.23 volt. But if you go like MMO, ReO2 is or IRO2, then it increases. So graphite is 1.7. The best one which are used for such processes are the BDD anodes, that is called boron doped diamond electrodes, and they are diamond, basically the synthetic diamond which are having doping of boron in it, and that has got very high value of oxygen ore potential, that is 2.3 or 2.7 volt. That means you have got that gap of that a lot of gap is available. This much potential is available for oxidation of the compounds or production of OH radical. So OH minus ions will be oxidized to OH radical in that case before the production of the oxygen starts, and that's why it is much more efficient when you have such boron doped diamonds as electrodes. So the another aspect of this is also there. You can see here the over potential is given as compared to the oxygen. So like again, BDD has got over potential of 1.3 as compared to, that means 1.23 volt is 0. If you consider that as 0, then net over potential of 1.3 is available here. So now another thing is very interesting here. You can see here, this is the adsorption enthalpy of MOH. here, and this is the oxidation power of anode. So you can, what is happening, the oxidation power of anode is more as you go down. The reason is definitely this, that the over potential here is more. Not only that, the chemisorption of OH radical here is on this side it is increasing. That means if you go towards up, here it is less. So that means on BDD anodes, OH radicals are produced and they are not chemisorbed there. They are available in the bulk of the liquid. So mass transfer is much faster. So that's why oxidation power of BDD is another advantage is this, that it does not have much affinity towards the chemisorption of OH radical. Okay. Yeah, so so this was about the OH radical. Now another very important species that we can generate is the chlorine gas. Or basically chloride in water can be oxidized to chlorine at anode, and that chlorine, you know very well that it dissolves in water and produces HCl plus HOCl, where hypochlorous acid is very powerful oxidant, and depending upon pH, if it is alkaline pH, then OCl minus, that is hypochlorite ions, will be produced, or if it is less than 7.5 or 7, then most of that will be HOCl, which is a much powerful oxidizing agent. So this can do the chlorination of the organic pollutants, but there is one risk here. A small risk here is that it can produce various types of chlorinated intermediates, which could be a problematic thing. Because those compounds could be carcinogenic or something. So here I have tried to show the animation, which is not possible here. So I am showing here the various oxidants, chlorine or OH radical, and that will oxidize this organic matter to carbon dioxide, hydrogen, H2O or SO4 or something. So yeah. Okay, this was one of the studies that I carried out on one wastewater of dye intermediate industry. You can see from the color, this was having very high COD, about 10,000 milligram per liter, and final COD here in the last test tube, you can see the color also is much faint, about 2,000 milligram per liter. And for this a pilot scale was produced. Pilot scale reactor was that, which was a 100-liter capacity, and it took about 18 hours to treat 100 liters of this mother liquor in that reactor, and which could produce current efficiency more than 90%. So it is possible. You can also see the salt which is deposited on the outside, and this means what I am trying to show is that this wastewater itself has very high concentration of salt in it, and that's why such treatments, such wastewaters are not amenable to biological treatment. We have to go for some kind of oxidative process like electrochemical oxidation. Type of electrodes, type of anodes also makes a lot of difference in chlorination. So you can see different types of anodes which are used where they are produced in situ chlorine for oxidation, and you can see the removal percentage, like COD removal percentage. If you see, the maximum occurs at 39% of PTIR kind of anode. So mixed metal oxide anodes are relatively good. For example, if you take RHOX or TiO2 here, or PDO or CO3O4 or RiO2 TiO2, which is a very generally very widely used SNO2 Sb2O5. This is very widely used electrode. So they are also giving good removal. But the point that I am trying to show is that it makes difference in terms of the type of anode also decides what kind of efficiency we will achieve. Okay. The same here again for the again I am showing the type of influence of the electrode material. You can see different types of materials used, and the COD removal is shown here. So it is much faster using BDD. So definitely in electrochemical oxidation, electrode material has got a lot of impact on the process. Now let's go to the next process, which is electro-Fenton process. In electro-Fenton, you know the basic Fenton process. It is the combination of Fe+2 and H2O2, which produces very strong oxidizing radicals called again the OH radicals. And this process, how we are conducting normal Fenton process, we are conducting in a reactor where we add H2O2 and then we add FeSO4 and the reaction occurs. And after the reaction is over, we need to neutralize this because normally the Fenton process occurs at acidic pH like 3, 2.5 such pH. So when you neutralize this, the ion that is Fe+2 that you have added will precipitate as FeOH thrice or some. So you need to have secondary treatment there. You need to do some treatment after the normal Fenton process. Here we are producing the hydrogen peroxide in situ inside the reactor. Now here so far whatever we have seen where the anodes were important, now cathode comes into picture. So at cathode, at a potential of about 0.69 volt, you can reduce oxygen O-2 of the water to O-1. Okay, so you can see here in H2O2 the valence state of oxygen is O-1. So from oxygen O0, I mean, so basically, not from the H2O oxygen of the H2O, but the gaseous oxygen or the molecular oxygen, that is O2 gas, that it's got valency of O0. From that we reduce it to O-1. Okay, on the cathode. So here we are now using cathode to produce in situ the H2O2. Okay, so and then these processes are very well known that you have got Fe+2. So you have to add either Fe+2 or you can have another set of electrodes where Fe anode is there. So it will produce Fe+2 and cathode hydrogen peroxide will be produced. So these two will then do the reaction further. So Fe+2 plus H2O2 will produce these very strong hydroxyl radicals, which are yeah. So this has been used very widely for the treatment of various types of pollutants. You can also so these are the reactors that we can use. We can have a divided cell. So you can see now here there is the cell is divided. This is our anode, this compartment, and this compartment is cathode compartment, and this is separated by a CEM, cationic exchange membrane. So it will not allow other ions, only cations will be able to move through. And you can see this cathode here, and then these bubbles are of the oxygen bubbles. So oxygen is released here. Now see, on cathode we have hydrogen production. We do not have oxygen production. So we have to supply oxygen externally. So if you supply oxygen externally there, it will be reduced on the cathode to O-1 that will be producing H2O2. So this is a divided cell. Similarly, you can have undivided cell also. So here also you can do like on the cathode, you can have the you can release the oxygen and it will produce the hydrogen peroxide. Sometimes now the processes which are occurring normally, we have seen practically that the amount of hydrogen peroxide produced here is not much. It requires a very efficient kind of cathodes, very high surface area cathodes, so that oxygen can be trapped there and then it is reduced. So which is sometimes not very easy to do. So people carry out a lot of research now in this way also, that they add externally the hydrogen peroxide in this, and Fe+2 is produced inside in situ, and that also is considered as electro-Fenton. But the pure electro-Fenton is this, where the H2O2 is produced inside and Fe+2 also will be produced inside. So sorry. Yeah. Yes. So this is the electro-Fenton undivided cell, and So as I said, it requires very special type of cathodes like PTFE O2 diffusion cathode is required, or carbon felt cathode is required. RVC also, reticulated vitreous carbon also is. So basically specific kind of cathodes are required which has got high surface as well as which can reduce the oxygen to O-1. Okay. You can also add to this reactor a UV light. So that will become then photoelectrophantom process. So you'll have there is a UV light of less than 360 is required. So if you do that up to like 254 nanometer or so, that much of wavelength, then it will produce one more help will come. That is that your UV will reduce this ferric ion to Fe+2, and it will result into production of OH radical. So you are adding one more source of OH radical. H2O2 is one source of OH radical. Another source we are producing here by having UV light on that. So you can have combination of UV here, and that will give you higher or faster oxidation. Okay. Now we go to the combination of processes where both electrodes are used. So I have touched upon some of these things like electrophantom with boron doped diamond. So BDD is anode. Now see, try to understand what is happening in electrochemical coagulation. Only anode is useful to us. In electrooxidation, only anode is useful to us. Again, cathode is not useful in both cases. Now, if you see the electrophantom, then cathode is important because there we are producing H2O2 on cathode. Anode is not doing much of a job there. But now if you combine this process like this, that your anode is BDD. Okay, we know that in indirect electrooxidation process that BDD produces much higher amount of OH radical as compared to other, because its oxygen over potential is very high. So anode also we are producing OH radical. On cathode we are producing hydrogen peroxide, and we release Fe+2 into the reactor so that it produces another set of OH radical. So basically this is the combination of processes where we have got both the electrodes coming into picture. So this is one electrophantom with BDD. Another is peroxycoagulation. So same way, your anode is made up of any metal like iron or something, and your cathode is normal cathode like graphite or something, where you are producing hydrogen peroxide, and on anode you are producing the ions Fe+2. So coagulation will also occur as well as the peroxidation will also occur. So these are the combinations where both the electrodes are brought into use. Okay. Yeah. So yeah, this is what we have just discussed. Yeah. Now the last process that I'm going to touch upon is the electroreduction process and electrocatalytic reduction process. We have been doing since last 5 years or so a lot of work on this, and very encouraging results we have obtained. Again, to just recollect that electroreduction process is quite a selective process basically as compared to oxidative processes, because there the OH radicals are produced and they are non-selective. They will just attack anything that comes in its way. But in case of electroreduction, we can have very good selectivity, what we want to reduce, what we want to degrade. So this is a selective process. This exploits the reduction of target pollutants on cathode, and the selective process, it is in terms of, because it is used for dechlorination of chlorinated compounds or azo cleavage of azo dyes or reduction of nitro to amino or something. So many specific ways in which you can use, and that's why it is important. Normally it uses a divided cell electroreduction process, and it can be so it is separated by a cation AXN membrane. So this is one such reactor that we are I have shown here. This is separated by a membrane, and here you can see this is our cathode here, and here it is anode. So the reaction occurs in the cathode compartment because there the reduction is going to occur. So normally we have found that electro reduction only is because here also it is direct electro reduction, and that's why that process is slow as compared to the other things. So that's why if you add some catalyst to the cathode compartment, that is called electrocatalytic reduction, and that the reaction becomes much faster. So you can add different types of novel metal catalyst. This one the figure which I am showing here is the use of silver particles, basically silver metal particles in the cathode compartment. You can see that the remole occurs, I mean, almost double. The rate of reaction becomes almost double in that case by addition of the. So that is called electrocatalytic reduction, where we can use catalyst. Now the question comes that why the metal or the presence of this catalyst improves the process. So yeah, so here also you can see the similar kind of picture which we earlier had seen for the electrocoagulation, the same two intermediates. So it is also working by cleavage of this azo bond and double bond end, and that's why it is producing the two different intermediates, and color is gone. So yeah, one thing I must tell you, that electro reduction process does not mineralize the compounds to CO2 and H2O. It will always degrade the compound, and the intermediates will be produced. These intermediates could be either biodegraded or they can be further treated. So electro reduction cannot be a complete process where you can achieve complete mineralization of the things. Okay. Yeah, so this is how the color remole occurs, and the similar study we have done with the palladium particles, and you can see the difference. This is the 2-chlorophenol without any catalyst, and this is with catalyst. The rate becomes almost 10 times faster than the without any catalyst. And one more thing here, you can see here in the right picture here, that is the amount of chloride ions that is produced, because this is required to prove that it is the dechlorination that is occurring. So chlorophenol, you can see the structure is like phenol plus one chlorine on one side. So that chlorine is selectively taken away, because out of OH and chlorine is more electronegative. So it is dechlorinated, it is removed from that. So phenol is produced. So we measured the amount of phenol, and you can see here the amount of phenol produced is almost stoichiometrically. Whatever is supposed to be produced, the same amount of phenol is produced, and the same amount of chloride ions are also produced, which proves that dechlorination, selective dechlorination only occurs in this process, and the presence of palladium particles makes it very fast. Okay. Yeah, so this is the so now the question is why it happens, why ECR is better than ER. So as I said here, the direct reduction can occur, that is your chlorinated compounds or nitro compounds can be reduced to amino compounds, or phenolic compounds or something. So this is direct reduction, is a slow process. Here also again, what we do is this is the mechanism that occurs in which hydrogen ions H plus is reduced at cathode to nascent hydrogen, and such nascent hydrogen is intercalated on the palladium or silver metal, and it produces hydride of palladium, that is called palladium hydride. It is this palladium hydride is able to it is very good, very powerful reducing agent. So because of this palladium hydride, this is reduced to these compounds are reduced and dechlorinated basically. Okay. Now so these are different types of process that we have seen. You can list down the question if you have. We'll go to the performance of electrochemical processes, how to check the performance, what happens. So in the performance, the overall performance of this process is depending upon the various aspects like electrode potential and current density. So how much is the current density that we need to know? So this controls, this electrode potential and current density controls which reaction should occur and at what rate it should occur. So it is very important to determine the efficiency of the process. When I say efficiency of the process, it is how much electrons I am supplying total by supplying my the current, and how much electrons are actually used for the reaction to occur. So that is based upon how much removal I achieve or what. So that is my current efficiency. So how much is this efficiency depends upon this potential and current density. Current distribution also determines, as I said, whether it is partially distributed properly or not. So it must be as homogeneous as possible. And mass transfer regime. So if there is greater uniformity of pollutant, then it will make sense. It will be high. It will give you higher efficiency if the uniformity of pollutants is there. So basically, a high level of mixing is required to do that. The cell design also depends. It also is important parameter, whether what is the kind of dimensions, what is the distance between the electrodes, whether there is any, whether it's a divided cell or undivided cell. All these things also makes a lot of influence on this system. And the medium of electrolyte, because the current in the water will not be able to flow if it does not have any ions. It is not possible to do the reaction in distilled water because it does not have any ions in that. So we need to add some salt into this. So what electrolyte you are using, whether it is NaCl, if you are using NaCl, this I'm talking about the pure samples, aqueous samples that you are studying. If it is wastewater, then it will come with the electrolytes. If it is not there, you may have to add. So if you add NaCl as an electrolyte, then electrooxidation by the way of chlorine production will be the predominant process. If you add sulfate, then OH radical will be a predominant process. So type of electrolyte also, in case of electroreduction process, catalytic electroreduction process, again the presence of chloride or sulfate will affect the efficiency of catalyst also to some extent. So we need to understand those things also. So the concentration, electrolyte, type of electrolyte, its concentration, pH and temperature, all these things are also affecting the process. And the electrode material, we have already seen so many slides where we have discussed that types of electrodes make a lot of difference. So basically what we need in any kind of electrode is that it should be stable in the medium, like it should not get dissolved, or it should not be, if it is required to be dissolved, like in electrocoagulation, it's okay, but otherwise in electrooxidation, your anode should not be dissolved. So it should be stable, it should be, cheap, easily available, and it must be showing high activity towards the pollutant reaction. So this is what we expect from the electrode materials in this case. Yeah. And lastly, we'll discuss about the various operating and controlling parameters, how we operate this process, what are the important parameters based on which these electrochemical processes are operated. First, the most important parameter is the current density, which is nothing but how much amperes, how much current in terms of ampere per meter square area of the electrode that you are allowing to pass. So that is called, like, for example, 10 milliampere per cm square or something is the current density. That means 10 milliampere, every square centimeter of the anode or cathode will have that much of current. So this makes a lot of difference, because if current density is more than what is required, then there will be secondary reactions, and there will be heat formation also, and that will be the loss of energy due to that. So, and if it is lower than that, then the reactions rate will be slow. So you need to always optimize what is the current density required. Another very important parameter is called charge passed. This is a very, very crucial parameter when you want to compare the different systems with each other. Then AH by L is very important. It is the total electric charge passed, that is how many ampere for how many hours per liter of the solution that you have taken. So that AH by L is another very, very important parameter which decides what will be the efficiency of reaction. You can also require to find out the instantaneous current efficiency. It is called ICE. That is, so as I said, it is defined as the ratio of electrons used for actual reaction to those who are supplied for the given time period. So suppose I have supplied certain moles of electrons during entire reaction, and out of that, how many moles of electrons are actually used for the operation or for the degradation of the pollutant. That ratio is called instantaneous current efficiency. So if suppose it is for wastewater treatment, and if it is based on COD, then you can use this equation, that is IC COD is equal to this. So basically this is based upon how many electrons you require. Here the oxygen requires 8 electrons, that's why it is or it is equivalent to, because its equivalent weight is 8, O minus 2, that's why it is 8 is there, and it is Faraday number and volume. So this is very well-known equation which you can use. So what we do is we find out how much COD is removed. So COD at T and plus minus COD at T plus delta T. So it is reduction removal of COD divided by how much time it has taken. So this gives us the current efficiency. Another parameter is energy consumption, that is how much total energy that we are using here. So it is, although important parameter is ampere, but sometimes the voltage requirement may be very high to supply that much of ampere. So that in that case your energy consumption will be high if the voltage also is high. So this is IV into T. So it is, it is the total power. It is I into V. How much time divided by volume. So how much power we are giving, that is kWh, kilowatt hour per meter cube of the reactants that we have taken. And electrochemical oxidation index is a parameter which is the average value of current efficiency during the oxidation, which is nothing but an integration of IC, instantaneous current efficiency, for a given time period. Okay. So, and that time period that you can determine is the time at which IC is almost zero. That means there is no further oxidation or reduction occurring. So, suppose my current efficiency is see, when you measure the instantaneous current efficiency, it starts from higher current efficiency initially, then it will go on reducing. So, when it becomes almost zero, between those two time points, if you integrate this curve, then it will give you electrochemical oxidation index. This index is very useful parameter. It can be used to compare again the severity of the pollutant. That means how tough the structure is, how difficult it is to oxidize or something, that you can make out from EOI, that is this parameter. Okay. Yeah. So yeah, so just to conclude, because I have reached to the time limit where I have to finish. This process is, as we have discussed so far, we have, let me just again recollect those things that we have discussed. We have discussed various types of processes, how they occur, and what are the parameters which are used to control that, and what are the operating parameters that we have discussed. So these methods are very effective, as we have discussed. There are some issues with the type of electrodes or the cost of electrodes, but otherwise they are very, very effective. The way in which it can be operated, so easily it can be operated or managed or automated. That is why there is a lot of interest of the people in this process. So proper selection of reaction conditions or type of method or reactor configuration can lead to very high process efficiency. So we need to understand that it is not a ready-made configuration available. We'll have to think about it, what kind of reaction that we want it to occur there, and based on that we can have different types of configurations. And you can achieve very high level of selectivity using ER and ECR. So yeah, so this is where I have come to an end of my session. We have got time now for the questions. If you have any questions, I'll be much more delighted to answer those questions.
Participants, if you have any questions, you can write in the chat box, or you can directly ask to the professor. Yes, any participant? Many of you are from the chemistry side also, and chemical engineering, and you can ask. Dr. Uma Shakti, do you want to ask question? Your mic is on.
No, sir, no, sir, no.
So please mute your.
Sir, there's one question for me.
Yes, yes, Mr. Hiran.
Yeah, yes, worked on methyl red, dye intermediate.
Methyl?
Methyl, you worked on methyl red, no? Some slide you.
No, it was about the methyl orange that probably I might have shown, or reactive black 5 might have shown.
Sir.
Methyl orange also has got one azo bond, and it will be yeah. So if it is deazotized, that means if you use the electro reduction process, then it will produce sulfonylic acid and another intermediate, another aromatic amine. So what is the question? Yeah.
My doubt is whether this coagulation system will work efficiently for all the other dye intermediates.
See, there are two ways in which electrochemical coagulation can work. One, as I said, is that the dyes could be adsorbed on the flux itself. So there is if it is a dye solution which is dissolved in it, there are no colloidal particles. Suppose you have got dispersed dye. Dispersed dyes are very tiny particles. They are not highly soluble in water. So for that case, electrocoagulation will definitely work. But suppose there are reactive dyes or acid dyes which are highly soluble in water. Okay, in that case there are no colloids that you have to remove. So in that case, color removal can occur. That may be because of the adsorption of dye on the flocks that are produced. There is one. Another is, if suppose you are using iron Fe as an anode, then there are possibilities that we can have Fe+2 doing reduction of the some of the dyes, and that way it will be decoloration. So this process is entirely chemical, because in case of adsorption, it is a physical process there. But if you have iron as anode, probably it may lead to reduction also. So it depends upon what dye structure it has. Suppose the dyes are azo dyes which are having any azo bonds, then definitely your electrocoagulation using iron will lead to the reduction of the dye and decoloration of the dye. That is always possible.
So some papers I've read on the website that the flocks formed in this system, in this process, they are very difficult to break.
Very difficult to remove.
Yeah.
Yeah,
They are
okay. Yes,
almost
yes,
like
yes. Yeah, that's a valid point. Actually, the reason, because reason behind that is, we discussed now there are bubbles also produced. That is your oxygen and hydrogen also is produced on the electrodes, and that will be trapped in these flocks, and that's why flocks will become light. So that may happen. So suppose you want them to settle down, then what you need to do is, a small amount of turbulence may be required so that those trap bubbles are released from the flocks. Or otherwise, you can allow it to, rather than settling down, you can take them, you can let them float on the surface, and then as a flotation unit, probably you can remove them. That is how it can be done. But you are right. I mean, it can happen many times that the flocks are not settling very well. So again, there are so many things in this also. The alkalinity or how much time you are doing this process also makes a lot of difference. Suppose you are doing electrocoagulation for a small time, then the flocks produced will not be so large or so tough that it can settle down. So that also is the one thing that we have to keep.
because sir, I was using copper electrodes and aluminum electrodes.
Right.
Up to a certain stage, I did get decolorization to a good extent. But later
Right.
on, again, the solution got colored. I think copper that
Color.
so electrodes started dissolving in the this thing solution.
Uh-huh. Okay. Yeah. Okay. If I got your question correctly, you are trying to say that it was first decolorized and later
Yeah.
on color came back, right?
Yeah. Correct.
Okay. 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 This for which dye this happened?
No, sir, I was treating for this thing, milk dairy waste.
No, but then there is no color in that. If it is milk dairy, then it will not be color. If you get any color, like because of any anode, for example, iron is there, then it will produce brown color flocks. If it is aluminum, it will produce white, grayish color of flocks. If it is iron, it can also produce greenish color of flocks. So this color could be because of the flocks. But if it is dye, then entirely different thing will be there. So I thought that it must be for the dye. If in case of dye, if it happens that first the decoloration occurs and then that color comes back, then it is called auto oxidation. So that can also happen in some of the dyes. Some reactive dyes, it is possible that it will be first decolorized by the cleavage of the azo bonds, and then there will be some kind of azotization process which will occur when it is exposed to oxygen or something. I have seen that because when I was working in the industries, we were one of that industry was one of the largest manufacturers of reactive black ply, and I had to do a lot of studies on reactive black ply, how it can be removed. And there where we were working, I found that if you remove the color by electrocoagulation also, at a fast rate, it is possible. But then after some time, if you keep that reactor for a long time in the air or something, then it will color will jump back again. It will be turning blue into the color. But that is because of the auto oxidation of the intermediates which are produced. So there is quite an interesting thing that can happen. But in your case, what you are finding maybe because of the type of anode that we have, I think that is the best thing that I know. I mean,
Okay. Any other
yeah,
participant who want to ask questions? Okay, then if
yeah,
nothing to ask, then I must thank you, Professor Dr. Rudy Patel, that he has given a very interesting lecture, and this lecture covers all the aspects of electrochemical methods in very beautiful manner, and his way of delivering lecture was very good. Thank you, Dr. Rudy Patel.
Yeah, thank you all. Thank you for your patience, patient listening, and you can. I mean, if anybody has any question, I mean, you people are all quite knowledgeable. If you have any question, definitely I'll be.
Yes, one question just came. Is there any possibility of auto-oxidation in photocatalysis process?
Yes, it is possible. It is possible.
That is Dr.
I
Suchitra
think
has to tell.
I think Dr. B.R. Sai is going to present his work.
Yes, yes.
Yeah, we have. I think let him answer probably in his session. We have seen such auto oxidation occurring also. So auto oxidation is possible in photocatalytic reduction also. It is not photocatalytic, the oxidation, not in photocatalytic oxidation, but photocatalytic reduction. It is possible that you may have such auto oxidation of intermediates.
Okay. Thank you, Dr. Giri
Yeah.
Patel.
Okay. Okay. Thank you so much.
So the participants, the next session will be at 3:30 p.m. by Professor Umesh Khare. So we will be meeting at 3:30 p.m. हाँ वो करवा दिया, नहीं आएगी कैसे यार, जिस दिन मतलब हर रोज आएगी और जिस दिन ये है उस दिन नहीं आएगी। तुम मैं रहने दो, पूछा रहने दो ना, क्या एक दिन होगा तो